Welcome. My name is Penny Rosema, and you are listening to the Cookware Manufacturers Association podcast. One of CMA's goals is to keep our members informed. In this podcast, networking expert Greg Peters will share the best kept secrets and value of strong professional networking. Now, you can find more information about Greg at thereluctantnetworker.com. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. But let's start by welcoming Greg to our podcast. Good morning, Greg.
Good morning, Penny. How are you doing today?
It's a good day. It's nice and sunny here in Michigan. Greg, let's start with the basics. Could you just tell us what your definition of networking is?
Well, that's a really good question because a lot of people sort of have a misconception that networking is all about sales. They're looking for clients. They're looking to close a sale, and that's a reason that a lot of executives avoid it because they don't seem that they need it. In reality, networking is about developing powerful relationships. A guy that I admire greatly is Bob Berg, who wrote a great book about networking called The Go-Giver. And he said that networking is the process of developing long-term, mutually beneficial, give and take relationships. And so it's about making connections, really.
The Go-Giver. Sounds like a good book to put on my bookshelf.
Oh, it's a fantastic one. I highly recommend it.
Now, whether you're a CEO or a young professional aspiring to grow in the organization, what do you recommend they need to understand about networking?
Probably the biggest thing they need to understand is that they absolutely need to do it. It's not, almost any other position in a company, they can get by without networking. They don't absolutely need it. They might be less efficient at their jobs, but they can do okay. But executives, they desperately need to create connections. They are often the face of their organization. They need to be connected to their community and their industry, and they don't need it just for the company. They need it for themselves. You see, I've been chatting with a lot of CEOs recently, and one of the things they say is that, in fact, there was a specific one I'm thinking of. She works at a credit union, and she told me when she became CEO, she discovered that everyone wanted to talk to her, and she had no one to talk to. She couldn't. She had to be the leader of the organization, so she couldn't confess her insecurities to anybody else around her. And it wasn't until she had sort of developed her connections with other CEOs and other industries that she had someone with whom that she could actually share the challenges of her job.
Wow, that's powerful. Well, then the next logical question here would be what are the best places for networking? Is there one strategy?
Well, it's funny because a lot of people do ask me that. They say, where should I network? And what they want is for me to tell them, oh, go to your local chamber, go to your local trade association. It depends on what you're trying to achieve. As CEOs, you're already doing some networking because one of the places you want to network is in your own workplace, in your own organization. The better connections you have within an organization, the more information you have to make your decisions and be more successful at your job. Beyond that, trade associations, especially for CEOs or executives, are a fantastic place to be because, again, you have your peers. You're able to get best practices. You're able to have confidants and those who understand where you're coming from as far as your job goes. And of course, the local chambers are a great place if you're trying to build better connections with the community. So there are a number of places just dependent upon who you were trying to reach out to.
All right, so there's no specific answer. It depends upon, the situation that you're in. And I feel like you've done a great plug for us as a trade association because CMA has conferences both in the fall and the spring, and we try to get in great speakers and have things that are relevant. But I will work hard at reminding people that this is a great place to network. And once they've listened to this podcast, they'll know how to leverage and use that networking skill. So thank you for that plug, Greg.
Hey, my pleasure. Anything I can do to help.
Yeah. Let's talk about mistakes. whether you're a CEO, let's start there, but even for, novices, are there different mistakes? And if they are, what are they? Or if they're common, tell us about that.
Well, it's people make mistakes at different points in their evolution as networkers. At the beginning, they don't realize they need to do it, so their mistake is they're not doing it.
Okay.
Then the next mistake is usually the focus on a specific end result. For example, they want to make a sale. They want to create a strategic partnership. So that's all they're focusing on. They're focusing on their own benefit, and that can be a challenge because once you start focusing on your own benefit, people sense that.
Mm-hmm.
And they start feeling a little uncomfortable about being around you because they feel like they're being used.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's not necessarily a bad thing to know what you need, but at that point you have to sort of let that go and be more invested in making the connection.
Okay. And
then probably the biggest one that the CEOs might make if they're already comfortable going out there and making those connections is they don't ask for help.
Oh.
They think they can do it all on their own. They try to do it all on their own, and they don't ask for help. And that can be for a variety of reasons. A lot of times we feel like if we're asking for help, asking for advice, we're showing ourselves as being weak.
Mm.
But the funny thing is, I just read an article about this, is that it's counterintuitive, but those who actually ask for advice and ask for help within reason are perceived as being more competent rather than less.
Well, isn't that interesting?
I thought so.
And I can think of a couple of examples where I've been around executive professionals and watched how their questioning worked. And you are right. I do view them as being very bright and above the mark of compared to other CEOs. So that's very interesting. So the biggest mistake is not doing it, and then followed by that is using it for your own benefit instead of seeing the bigger picture. Being invested in the connection is what I heard you say, and then finally asking for advice is a big big mistake that people are not aware they're making. For our listeners, we're talking with Greg. He's a networking expert. Greg Peters has a website, thereluctantnetworker.com. He's made it his profession to become an expert in this category and has lots of advice. We're going to talk a little bit later about something he has called the 52 Tips I'm a big fan of. But this is Greg Peters from thereluctantnetworker.com. Check it out if you're finding any of this information valuable so far. Greg, my next question is, how do I get what I need from my network? We got to be careful about being a specific target, but kind of walk me through how I do get what I need. Any suggestions?
Well, when you are looking to gain something from your network, it's kind of like a bank account. You have to have been giving all along.
Oh.
Your network, I mean, if you want to think about it kind of as personal friendships, someone you just met, you're probably not going to ask to come over and help you move.
Okay, I agree.
Your relationship hasn't developed to that point yet. So you need to be aware of those relationships you have developed and that you've built to the point where you feel comfortable asking for help. So that's the big thing right from the start is being aware that you are giving. You have to be of service to your network. Once you've done that, once you've put the effort into the account, so to speak, then you can start making withdrawals.
That makes a whole lot of sense. And again, I can think of personal examples where I've been in situations where they've networked with me and helped me on something, and I was, very grateful for it and kind of thinking, wow, why'd they do that? And then somewhere down the road, they reach out. LinkedIn is an example of that for me, where I'll get somebody connecting on LinkedIn asking for something, and we haven't even met or I don't even know them. Do you get questions about that much?
Well, people ask, what LinkedIn, believe it, is a great tool. It is a wonderful way of tracking your network and keeping track of them and knowing what's going on in their lives so that you have excuses to be in touch with them. I love it for that purpose. But those who just randomly reach out to connect, it doesn't seem to. It seems a bit like they have some ulterior motives, which again, it makes it sort of for lack of a better word, the technical phrase I believe is icky.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so a lot of times if I'm contacted through LinkedIn, what I'll do is I will respond back to them and I'll say, you know what, I would love to connect with you, but I apologize, I've forgotten where we met. Because to me, if I don't know them, they're not really part of my network. I can't make recommendations for them.
I really like that.
I'm always willing to share a phone call or a coffee so we can learn more about each other. That's how you extend a network, is by personal connection, not just by toting up the numbers, if you will.
I get it. Well, my next question, this kind of leads into it, is how do I get started? And I'm hearing one recommendation would not be to just throw out random blast to everybody that you're remotely connected to in LinkedIn. Aside from that, let's talk about the face-to-face connections. How does a person get started if you're listening to this and thinking, I'm really not very good at this? What would you recommend for first steps?
Well, here's the thing. Everyone has already started. Everyone already has connections. They already have people they know.
Okay.
So start with them. Start with, hey, I was going through my email the other day. I saw your name, and I realized we haven't talked in a while. You can reach out by email that way. Or if you want to make a call, that's super. Just call them up. A lot of people have this misconception that networking is all about attending networking events.
Okay.
Networking events are definitely a part of the networking process. That's how we meet new people. But you don't build strong relationships once a month in a crowded room talking about the weather for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You have shared experience. So the first thing you have to do to get started is to understand you are going to build strong relationships by reaching out to people, by following up with those you've already even met. And then once you're starting to talk with them, maybe you can start asking them, who else should I know? Because then you have those personal introductions. When you have those personal introductions, it makes the connections even stronger. So start with a network you already have. Ask for their advice. Ask for the recommendations on who you should be connecting with or where you should be going to connect. And you'll find it actually goes a lot easier that way.
I'm listening to your 52 tips over a couple of different years now, and something comes to mind is that I'm sure I picked up from your 52 tips, and I couldn't tell you which one it was, but about when I'm going to an event or an association, let's talk about trade association, and you join something new. I used to collect a whole bunch of cards, and then I never followed up on any of them. And now I will look specifically for one card, and I'll write on the back of that card something that we had as a link, some common interest. And then my only goal of that event was to follow up with that one card to that one person and create a more lasting relationship. And doing that one card at a time has been very helpful. Am I right? Did that come out of the 52 tips, or just by osmosis?
That one doesn't sound familiar to me, so maybe you came up with that one on your own, and I may steal it. So.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure I got it somewhere from conversations with you, but yeah.
Yeah, well, and this happens to a lot of people as they go to the networking event. They come home with 6 cards, and they intend on following up, but if they don't have a process for doing so, then what ends up happening is they end up with a stack of cards on their desk.
Okay.
So yes, the follow-up is absolutely necessary. One of the things I actually recommend to people is if you are chatting with someone, say at a chamber or a trade association event, and you find you're hitting it off, instead of asking for their card and promising to follow up later, why not right then and there say, hey, would it be, I'm really having a great time with this conversation. I'd like to continue it after this event. Could we schedule a coffee or a phone call for next week sometime?
That's the tip I remember. See, I had it a little bit slow. That's it. Yes.
I call it the immediate follow-up. It just makes things so much easier. You don't have to remember to follow up because you already have.
I got it.
And it's more likely, instead of a 4-week break between conversations, you might have a few days or a week, which means that you still have that good rapport that you've built at the networking event that you can then ride on to make the conversation go more easily.
And that is what I like about that is it's so intentional. And I'm
Hmm.
done. I don't have to have the burden of thinking, well, I'm going to this networking event. I need to do something afterwards. I'm just going there and I did it and I'm kind of a type A person. I can check that off. I've got that next step already accomplished. Uh, Greg, I've talked a couple of times about the 52 networking tips, which is one of my favorite ways to start the day or the week, because they're once a week, if I remember correctly, the 52. Tell us a little bit
Yep.
about that and how you create them and what a person could expect from them.
Well, I know that when I go out and I do a speaking engagement in front of an association or I do a sales training or whatever, one time in front of a group isn't enough to make any significant changes. So I had been in contact with another speaker who had a program called the 52 Speaking Tips, and I just found them to be so valuable. I thought, well, why couldn't I do that same thing for networking? So I had a series of 1.5 to 2 minute recordings, or just literally quick concepts, quick tips about the networking process, and I set them up to be released one a week. Once you sign up, you just start receiving them, and it's just you get the short recording and a transcript in case it's inappropriate that you play a actual sound in your office setting.
Mm-hmm.
But it helps people kind of stay on track with what they're trying to achieve with their networking.
What I liked about them, or I do like about them, is that they're just these little bite-sized things that I can kind of think about one little short minute a week that I could kind of start to build into my whole process and my whole thought process about networking. So I think they're just fabulous, and I hope you continue to keep offering them out there. Greg, if people wanted more information about networking, if they had lunch and learns or wanted to do a webinar or some other way to reach you, you do author other training or presentations. Just tell us briefly about that.
Oh, certainly. Oh, and I guess I should mention, if someone actually wanted to sign up for the 52 Connection Tips, just go to www.52connectiontips.com,
And the
and
number
the
five
full sign
two.
up is right there. 52, yes.
Okay.
And as far as my other presentations, yes, I speak in front of course, I've spoken in front of local chambers, but I love speaking in front of the trade associations because it helps get that information out there a little better. Because the more great networkers we have out there, the stronger those associations can be, because people will find more value when they show up.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
it's a great way to be able to help the associations and the individual members of the associations. So yeah, I do presentations like that, and then quite often I'm brought in to present to sales teams or marketing even, because they need to have those skills when they go out and do networking and understand how to be more effective at that networking process.
Excellent. All right. Well, Greg, thank you so much for sharing your valuable tips today. I also wonder if you have any additional advice that you'd like to close with.
Well, the one thing I would say is sort of the last thought is, remember that when you're out there networking, you're actually building a resource for yourself. It's a resource that's going to make you more successful at your job, but it will also help you build a life of success and significance.
Uh-huh. Very good. Great words of advice. My name is Penny Rosema. We are recording for the Cookware Manufacturers Association. Now, if you'd like more information about Greg or his website, you can click into thereluctantnetworker.com, and it will be posted on the website with this podcast. And listeners, we need your feedback, so we can continue to keep you informed. Was this audio interview valuable to you? Do you have questions or topics you'd like to suggest for future interviews? Let us know. My email address is prosema@cookware.org. You'll find this podcast and others in the member section of our cookware.org website. Look for the link CMA Podcast. Again, thank you for listening. Enjoy the day.